Hello, all you amazing beings out there. We are Mindfeelz, and today we're going to be talking about shame.
Shame.
So
We talked about empathy last week and it came up in the podcast. So we decided to go into shame a little bit deeper and really kind of buy into some of these concepts and as to why we might be getting where we're at in this world and how we sort of go into those places to heal from like the bottom, like the source of the problem. So I think empathy is about this mindset as well as compassion and being able to move in these healthy ways, and underlying why it might be hard to do some of those things uh, goes along with, I think, stories of shame and where shame comes from, and how that lives in a lot of our traumatic backgrounds, and how we transcend shame to get to these better places of healing and building ourselves up into healthier places where we feel confident and certain, and where we can then pass that on to our friends and family and loved ones. So shame in itself is about these kind of negative thought patterns that we have inside of us that may have started from childhood or may have started from a place of a traumatic event where we felt discouraged or brought down or kind of taken off, almost even taken out of being human, or being even a female, or being a man, or being whatever we might hold true to our identity. So anything that has hurt us in our lives, that told us that we weren't good enough, or that we weren't okay, or that what we were doing was wrong, and that may have put this negative thought pattern into us, that then came up in the future and made it hard to transcend those places and then let us live into these more confident states.
So, and I think shame really, and whenever we decide to talk about this, Sheena and I, like, one of the first questions that pops up is, what's the difference between shame and guilt? Because they are different, and I think focusing on shame is more of, it's a belief you hold about yourself that you are inherently flawed or there is something wrong with you. Whereas guilt is, I feel guilty about a wrong choice I made or an action that I took that wasn't right. And my guilt kind of guides me to make amends or apologize or change my behavior. Shame is really never a tool for us, whereas guilt is something our moral compass kind of can use as a tool to correct behavior, because we all make mistakes that we have a little bit of guilt about, and then we hopefully correct and try to avoid making those mistakes in the future. Whereas shame is this voice inside of ourselves that tears us down as people. And it can also come from other people tearing us down who we are. You know, I am inherently bad, something is inherently wrong with me. My body, who I am, my sexual orientation, my relationships, my intelligence, something is wrong with me. It's an area where we feel we're not good enough the way we are. And I see shame really leads to a lot of disconnection. It leads to a lot of addiction because people want to hide the things that they're ashamed of. And it often traps us into this untrue belief that we can't break free of those ideals, that we hold ourselves to that standard of, I'm not good enough, I can't be that way, I can't be the person I want to be because I'm inherently flawed. And it tends to really sabotage our ability to connect with each other and our ability to have compassion and empathy, because it's hard to tap into empathy if you don't want to confront your own stuff.
Absolutely.
And shame kind of tells you, cover that up, don't tell that person that you identify them with them, because ooh, then they're gonna know, like, this bad thing about you, this problem you have, this flaw you have. And what I would really like to do is expose shame for the toxic concept that it really tends to be, and look into, how do we heal our shame? How do we change our self-talk? How do we change our internal beliefs? And then that also influences how we treat, other people.
I think it has to start with noticing it, I would imagine, because I think there's plenty of times in my life where I don't even notice that that's what's going on. And then that's interesting that you said about
mask it with other behaviors,
Yeah,
but
sure.
the root is something much different.
So I think it's continuously looking at yourself and saying, you know, are my intentions or my motives kind of in alignment with my, you know, higher good? It doesn't have to be this daunting sort of idea of like your best self and you're being like this perfect human being all the time, because I think that could be a little bit um, difficult.
That might lead to more shame trying
Yeah.
to be that
Yeah.
because it's not attainable.
Right. It's like it's okay if it happens. You just notice it as it's happening, and then you work to kind of dive in to say, okay, where does that even come from in me? You know, and know that like we all have stuff like that. And yeah, and I think that is so cool how you tapped in on the empathy thing, because when we were talking about empathy, I think we were saying like, why is it so hard? You know, why is it so hard?
Guard come from?
Right.
Where we can't, the pride or whatever the wall is.
And I do think it comes around like these. We have shells. Freud's talked about it. Carl Jung. A lot of this psychoanalysis, it looks at these like we take these like these hardcore like walls and we put them up around these traumatic situations, and then we like live around that. We never touch it, and it's like unless we break that wall down and get in there, then we don't. We continue living outside of that with that traumatic situation or that shame, or it doesn't have to be traumatic too. It doesn't have to be this like big ordeal. It can be, something that seems simple, and we wouldn't even discredit it by calling it simple, because everything's relative as you're going through it. So somebody calling you a name, that may seem like it's not a big deal to somebody else, but depending on your age, your brain, where you were at, that could be really, really detrimental to your personality and your identity.
Triggering of, underlying shame, or it can create new shame for you if you're not, if things are communicated in the right way, or if someone, attacks a part of you. Sometimes when people attack our behavior or criticize our behavior, we feel like they're criticizing who we are because we have connections to shame around those areas.
Yeah.
Like I might feel like I'm not adequate at something, so then when I try that new thing, around someone else and they notice that I'm not the greatest at it, sometimes that might pull on, a shameful belief I have about myself that I'm incapable of being good. Yeah, that you're limited, in yourself. And I think it's important that we realize we are limitless. As human beings, we really are. We have creative energy inside of ourselves. It's all around us, that same energy that's in every living thing and all over. We are not limited so that we can't break free of these things. So I think the awareness and then working to shift that perspective and feel your ability to move past it.
And then this is the mindset that allows you to take the reins on that and say, I do limit myself when I allow shame to enter into my relationships, into myself, into my thought patterns, things like that. And we do then have the power, or we can take that power back rather. And I've heard that a lot, is like, don't give your power away. As we get older, and become adults, it becomes more noticeable when you do give your power back away, but you probably gave your power away a million times in your childhood, throughout all these different engagements of your life. So you might have to go back and say, when did I give my power away? And how do I, let's get that back now and notice that I did give my power away a lot of times in my life, whether it be to get a certain job, or to, I don't know, how I was playing with the kids on the playground, things like that we don't really think about every day. Those moments were very important to us, and how we transcend those moments is to maybe go back and check on that stuff now. And I would also like to say, from a conversation even earlier, that some of this stuff can come from not even our personal life that we understand to be true. And that might be like too much into reincarnation or like into these other things, but I think it's kind of a phenomena, and we can't really necessarily always put our finger on it, but definitely there is such thing as generational trauma, and there is impact. And even if it's just that the household that you were in kept that alive, kept something alive that maybe passed on in a generation before, and they kept the concept alive and the thoughts alive, and then that goes into children in the household or school systems, or it could even be a teacher. It doesn't even have to be in the household. So there's a lot of spaces that we have to remember.
Shame in our culture.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
we
true.
see societal shame, we see cultural shame, we see sexual shame and body. I mean,
Yeah.
all kinds of ways where we have to think about we are not insulated in our own bubble. We are in contact with the world, with other people, with our past, with the past of the people we have relationships with. We are very much intertwined, very much connected. And so now that we realize, okay, like shame can come from any number of places, it's a very limiting belief to hold shame. So where, after that awareness is reached and you start to recognize it, where then do we begin to reverse those mindsets? Where then do we begin to learn how to protect our energy and restore our healthy mindsets and, kind of force out that toxic shame that we have while still being a part of the world, while still having close relationships, while still keeping connection to family members and history and culture. And a lot of it, I think, starts with just the simple tools of mindfulness, meditation, journaling, we always talk about how important it is to get to know yourself. And really, when those uncomfortable, icky feelings come up and we want to run from that thing about ourselves, or we want to put it on another person that, oh, it's because of this that I feel so upset, or it's because of this that I don't feel good enough. Time to look into ourselves and confront, whatever beliefs we might be holding and nurture and heal them. And, the more you put in light and positive beliefs, this is where mantras are very helpful. For people who maybe don't subscribe to like some of the yogi stuff, mantras are just affirmations, just things that you tell yourself daily that help encourage your mind to change its way of thinking about yourself and about your life and about others. And those are some of the tools that I feel like are really helpful when dealing with shame. And then looking at how do we address our shame with other people? How do we bring that into that connection and guided more toward vulnerability rather than the secrecy that we tend to want to keep around our shame?
Well, yeah, I think it's when we're in conversation with someone or when we're sitting with someone and we feel that want to run from that, there's another good opportunity to say, oh, while they're sharing something with me that for some reason makes me uncomfortable, what is it inside me that hasn't dealt with something or isn't ready to look at something or has dealt with something but just doesn't really like to hang out around that, because it can be while you're already working on it. What is that, and taking the time to realize it, or even, we can be so good with communication, and I think we start to be open is like maybe even telling that person, what, like, I respect your journey and what you're going on through right now, but that really brings up something in me. I've never done that, but I was just thinking about it when we were talking about it. Like,
Yeah.
maybe because sometimes it is too hard and we haven't worked through it yet, but then that's the time to write that down, put it in your iPhone, like in a notes, like, later when I get home, there's something here. Maybe I need to work on it. Maybe that was like a sign from the universe that gave you that exact moment in time so that you can realize what's going on in you, so you could transcend that and raise your vibration and get to a better place, so that next time somebody does give you that information or that story, you can sit and hold space for them, because you could be like, I know that feeling, I've been there. But not necessarily say that to them, but hold that space for them so that they can share with you, and we can become these really beautiful space holding alien mirrors for everyone.
Connected.
But really, it would be nice.
It's and I think that
we would feel safe in so many more settings.
Yeah.
What if the grocery store attendant was able to hold space for you? I mean, maybe the people behind you would be upset because like they're trying to buy their groceries. But
what if they could hold space for you too? Like, okay, this woman's having a hard day.
We're all holding space. We're getting through it.
Yeah. So and then there's so I think that leads us to the conversation of, we're looking at our own shame, we're looking at ourselves, self-awareness, then how do we deal with other people's shame? How do we be an open, receptive, safe place for other people's shame? Because I think we see a lot of this, especially around like body image, around addiction, around those feelings of acceptance within family, and those very like things like your body and who your family is, and if you have an addictive behavior that's very consuming for you, those things often tend to feel like a part of our identity, but they're
Yeah,
not. They're not.
it's
And
true.
how do
Those are
we
limiting belief
they're
systems.
very limiting beliefs, and shame perpetuates those limiting beliefs. Shame feeds addiction. Shame feeds, poor body image and poor self love and all of those things, and it really hinders connection. So how do we hold space for someone else when they're brave enough to express shame? Sometimes that judgment might come up, sometimes a little pride might come up, or sometimes it can be triggering for something that we feel, and we might want to get away from that because it doesn't feel good and kind of distance ourselves from it. So how do we prepare ourselves to receive the shame of others and help, make them feel accepted and kind of break that belief down that that's a part of who they are? And I think that's something that, we practice personally, but in the world, there is a lot of judgment. There is a lot of competition. We talked about
Yes.
competition kind of being a hindrance for empathy. I think that those
Well,
things also have to be, tapped into in our social interactions.
well, maybe no, maybe it feeds back into it. So I'm thinking, if we become more empathetic, if we let go of these shameful
Mm-hmm.
patterns, then we're going to be more sensitive going into business. We're going to be more sensitive going into school, going into college, getting these careers that run the systems of our world. And then we're going to set up systems that are more sensitive for the people, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be paying attention to, oh, does, this one way really fit everybody's thought patterns in this classroom, as opposed to, oh, well, it doesn't fit yours, so we're going to put you over here and give you a label. I think that is going to give and I, maybe it does feel a little bit weird to be more sensitive in that way, but I just think it's what we have to do.
Yeah.
So I don't care if it feels weird. Like, it doesn't, if I'm sorry if you, feel like you're stepping on eggshells with people. I don't think you are. I think you're having to change your thought patterns and your ways of being to accept a more diverse world so that we can all live here in harmony. If that's the ultimate goal, if you've got to bite your tongue a few times because you're used to kind of, doing the whole no filter thing, I think that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's okay.
Yeah.
And so we've got to step into these roles, step into these places, take responsibility for ourselves, work through these shameful places in ourselves, get to where we're holding space for other people and where other people can share with us so that they can also learn this tool, so we can then usher in a new world of, diversity and ease and grace and all those good things we talk about on a regular basis.
And this type of living and being takes intention. And if
Yeah,
that's a
it
problem for
does.
you, like, wake up, because you have to live with intention if you want to grow and you want to be the person you want to be, and you want to create, and you want to fulfill your purpose, and you want to help other people fulfill their purpose. It just doesn't happen without intention. I mean, it is true. We talk about how things fall into place, and we talked about trusting the universe, and we've talked about those things, but I think we've also made points, and I want to reiterate that this is intentional way of living. And yes, when you begin it, um, it might seem like, oh crap, I have to like do this work. Like, I have to be self-aware and journal and listen better to other people. Yeah, you do. If you want to raise the frequency of everything around you, start there. But that happens. But the great thing is that this level of intention produces results when you really spend the time. And I think looking at some of the shame language we might use with ourselves can help us be more sensitive when applying that to others. I mean,
So what's some language that?
for for instance, like, I'll do something for me. I have kind of fears of abandonment, and a lot of that comes from the root stem of feeling unworthy. So that shame of, I'm not good enough to deserve this kind of love, or there's no way someone would stick around for me because I don't deserve that and I'm not good enough for that. And now I've been shifting those perspectives in my relationships when that fear comes in that wants to lead to a controlling behavior, per se, or start an argument or push someone away that I have a relationship with because I'm afraid of being rejected by them or abandoned by them. I kind of make the first move and push away. And instead of that language of, you know, of course they're going to leave me because, you know, we just had this argument and I'm not good enough and why would anyone stick around for me? Instead, I know my worth. I know my value. I'm worthy of love. I deserve healthy relationships. And I will put in the energy into this relationship to produce that. If this person doesn't respond and reciprocate, that's not about me. Cut down that shame that puts everything on you. And a lot of that language where we do like the self-deprecating talk where we, you know, maybe, oh, my body isn't good enough. This pair of jeans didn't fit because I'm too skinny or I'm too fat or my hips don't look right. Something's wrong with me. No, those jeans just don't fit. Try something else, you know, like try something else if it doesn't fit. Don't tell yourself that something's wrong with you. And that's a big one. We do a lot. We do it about a lot of little things. We shame ourselves throughout the day.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about as like where that really stems from. I know we talk about childhood and things like that, but um, I think it comes also from a place of being in a competitive world and being in a world with a lot of borders and things like that and having distinct lines and different cultures, and it's a confusing world. And I think that a lot of this shame is not, it's like not a, it's not something we could have controlled at some point. So be easy with yourself as you're going through that stuff, because maybe just because you have that in you doesn't even really mean that you even feel that way about yourself. You just might have a pattern in you that is that way. You know, maybe you've seen somebody else look in the mirror in your family, in your household, or somewhere else, and or your sibling, because we do look up to our siblings a lot, and you've seen them do that to themselves, and then you got it stuck in you.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't even feel that way. Maybe you actually, you know, you think you love yourself, but when stuff like that comes up, you notice those negative thought patterns that are in there. So remember that we can just have stuff in there that's like, you know, it's just there. So be really aware of that. It doesn't have to be this big ordeal that, you know, you have low self-esteem and low confidence. Maybe it's just something you've got to let go of so you can move on to
it can be simple stuff.
Yeah.
You know, just noting, you know, the whole thing of, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. I'm a Southern girl, so I was raised that way. My mom was like, if you don't have something nice to say, you don't have to say anything. And keep those things to yourself, you know, if you don't have something nice to say about somebody else. We do that with ourselves. You know, think about, what are you saying to yourself? Would you say that to a best friend about them?
That's a very good way of looking at it.
I think a lot of, especially for personally as a woman, what the huge comparison culture of body and sexuality for women, and happens with men too, but I've only personally experienced it as a woman, so that's all I can, you know, speak to right now. But a lot of that self-deprecating talk, okay, if you were hanging out with your sister or your best friend or your mom and someone came up to them and started talking to them the way you talk inside of yourself to yourself, what would you do? What would you say to that person? Would you allow that treatment of someone you love? No, I mean, and you would want to comfort the person you would love, and you would want to tear down all those negative things and replace them with positive things. We look at ourselves that way, as our own best friend, as our own sister, as our own brother, as our own mother, father, like
so
healing those things in ourselves.
It's do unto others as you wish done unto yourself, but then also do unto yourself that you would do to others, or you'd wish others would do to you.
Treat yourself like someone you really, really love.
Yeah, that's true. Or I think, I always think about self-love as this motherly love, not this selfish love. But I was thinking a little bit while you were talking to about really focusing on taking responsibility to ease all this stuff inside yourself. A lot of times we might be getting like that shame feeling from the outside. Remember that our job is not to tell someone necessarily we're valuable or worthy or that we're good enough. If we have to go over that and do that to somebody else, that's that's something else. Our job is to embody self-worth, being good enough, value ourselves, because sometimes that can be like I think there's a political term for it, but it's like this like kind of roundabout negative way of like feeding ourselves and not actually healing ourselves, is by like, always pointing the finger and blaming and kind of victimizing ourselves, because everybody maybe has shamed us, or or is telling us things. We have to remember to look into ourselves. A lot of times, if we're not valuing ourselves or taking self-worth practices for ourselves, we can easily point the finger at other people, and or situations or jobs or family members. And really what we need to be doing is the self-care practices, meditating, working on our own self-talk. Because when we get ourselves to a healthy place, nobody around us is going to affect us in that way anymore.
It's very true.
So,
you can protect your own belief system. You can build that up so strong that someone produces external shame. They shame you from the outside, and it makes you question who you are, and they attack you on a level where it hits, like they think I'm flawed, they think I'm not good enough, they're coming at me in this way. If you have protected and cultivated your beliefs about yourself, to know that those things could never be true about you, it's easy to release, it's easy to forgive, it's easy to not take that in and recognize that just because someone says something and it hits us in a certain way doesn't mean we need to take it in or own it. And a lot of our shame, honestly, I feel like not even ours. We don't need to own this. We don't need to carry it and it's this heavy thing and I have to work on it and it's going to take me so long to fix myself, and let that go. And that's part of the process of, even if what you're dealing with is really big, even if it is something like addiction or self-harm, mental health, depression, anxiety, things that seem like these big giants in our lives that we feel like we spend our whole lives battling them. Let go of your shame and accept that you don't have to identify yourself with those things every day and carry them around. And I say that from struggling with, anxiety stuff and PTSD stuff, and sometimes those labels feel so heavy that you're like, I'm going to battle this my whole life. This is a part of me. And removing that from the identity and the worth and the value that you give yourself as a person, even if you are going through those things, even if
but you got to do your work.
Struggles.
Coming from my
daily,
own personal journey,
renewing of those mindsets.
Coming from my own personal journey, and I think we're kind of ending after this, is that I've had some negative thought patterns. I've had some negative ways of being that came out in my behavior that created a mess in my life. But I've let go of that as but it's not a letting go as to like make myself feel okay with all that stuff, like behaving that way again. It's not like it's about doing my work, building my vibration, becoming very actually really truly confident in myself, and moving in a different way, and knowing that the world, if I go back into those thought patterns and I feel all that stuff again, that I actually have the same ability to become that same person again. Yeah. So it does take work, and it's important that we land in those healthy spaces and we clear out those patterns and really work to become that healthy person that we can be, that we are entitled to be, or maybe entitled's not the word.
We all have that potential.
Yeah.
We all have that unlimited potential to be our best self, and whatever that is, whoever that is for each of us, and releasing those limiting beliefs daily throughout, when you notice them, when you've ignored them, whatever. And I think that's it. There's the renewing of your mind is a constant process. And
just continue raising your vibration to these healthy levels and spaces. If it doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. For you, whatever right is. I don't even mean it in like a right and wrong sort of way, but feeling wise, it should feel healthy and light and clean. And if you got to be good to yourself
and reach out.
And love yourself.
Have good support. Reach out. Find that support. And I'd like to leave maybe with a couple of ideas for affirmation, mantra kind of things that we can use to help ourselves. when you make a mistake, when you make a bad choice, I made a bad decision, but I am not bad. I am good. I am capable of making better decisions in the future. If you're feeling like something's wrong with your body or the way you look, there's nothing wrong with the way that I was made. I am, like perfect and love, and I am full of light. I am full of positive energy. I can positively affect the things around me. When I fall down, I will give myself a safe space to get back up, to move past that. And just simple things, whatever works for you, whatever you feel the negativity is coming in, think of just the opposite of that. When you feel like I'm not good enough,
I am
replace
good enough.
That. I'm worthy of love.
I'm valuable.
I'm capable of doing great things.
And go as far as to really focus on what it feels like to be those things. Find those places where you did feel worthy, where you did feel confident, where you did feel beautiful, and embody those feelings. And then you add those, and then you just start rolling with that.
Yeah. Sometimes there's this saying I like, it says, don't sit in your shit. So we all get in our shit. Just
learn from your shit. Just don't sit in
it. Remind yourself of the good stuff you've done, the good stuff you're capable of doing, the good stuff you want to do, and pump yourself up. Like you're a best friend, like you're a lover of yourself, and just pump yourself up as much as possible. There's nothing wrong with that. We need to build ourselves up as much as possible. And our friends.
Yes.
Well, I'm Lauren Garrison.
I'm Sheena Dressel.
And we are Mindfeelz.